Hello guys, welcome to a new video. In today's video, I'm gonna talk about a very special camera. This camera is although 11-year-old, but still it can take great photos and also make really nice video even in 2022 and 2023. So the camera that I'm talking about is Canon 600D. This camera is also known as Canon T3i in USA. If you are new to my channel, consider subscribing it and pressing the notification icon. And you can also check out some other videos on my channel. So here is how this camera looks like. So you can see the build quality is pretty good on this camera. If I talk about the technical specification of this camera have an 18 megapixel sensor and the ISO range on this camera goes from 100 to 6400, which you can expand up to 12800, and in low lighting situation it does a decent job. I won't say that it is the best camera for low lighting situation, but it does a pretty nice job. It has 9 autofocus points, and in photography the autofocus works really well. The frame per second on this camera is only 4 frames per second, so this is not the camera that you would want for sports or wildlife photography. And the dynamic range on the camera is just 11, so not the best camera when it comes to landscape photography. But this camera have exposure bracketing, so using exposure bracketing you can still get high dynamic range photos. Now let me talk about some of the good things about this camera. The first good thing about this camera is that it has a flip out screen. So you can see this screen can be rotated in any direction. Although this is not a touch screen, it is a 3-inch screen and the resolution is pretty good, but having a flip out screen gives you the chance to see yourself. So if you hold your camera like this, you can see yourself. So you can do vlogging if you are recording some video for YouTube, so you can get your framing right so that your head is not cropped and you are in the frame. Other than that, one really good thing about this camera is that you can connect an external mic to the camera, and having a good audio is really important in your video. To get a good audio, you need to connect an external mic because the internal mic on this camera is not that great. So this camera, since it has a external mic input, so you can get really nice professional audio and make really nice cinematic videos. So this camera can do full HD video up to 30 frames per second. So you can use that for making some cinematic videos because this camera can also do 24 frames per second. However, this camera cannot do 4K video, but even in today's standard, most of the people who watch your videos are on mobile and they watch the video in full HD or even lower resolution because they want to save the data. If you want to watch a video in 4K, it's gonna consume a lot of mobile data. That's why even today, if you put a video in full HD, that is good enough. It will get the job done. And you can also upscale your full HD video into 4K resolution as well. There are workarounds for that as well. Weight of the camera is around 550 gram. And it feels good in your hand. When you hold this camera, the grip is really nice. It is easy to play around with the settings, easy to change the menus and all the basic settings that you need. And as is the case with most of the Canon camera, this camera is really very easy to operate. So here is how this camera looks from the top. From the back, the camera looks like this. You can see this is not a touch screen. So every settings or menu that you need to change are using these buttons. From the side, the camera looks like this, and from this side you have the option to put the SD card over here, and from the bottom the camera looks like this. Overall, really nicely built camera, a solid camera which feels great in your hands. Now I'm gonna put onto the screen some of the sample photos that I've taken with this camera, and I really like the photos that I've taken with this camera. This camera can take really nice photos. If you really know the basics of photography, you know how to control your aperture, how to use the shutter speed and ISO, you can get really good photos even with this camera. Even 18 megapixel sensor in today's standard is more than good enough. You can do professional work with 18 megapixel. You can make really large prints as well with 18 megapixel. If you are using a 50 mm lens with this camera, then you can get even nicer blurry background and that creamy bokeh that you always want in a portrait photo. So if you are using this camera, I would advise you, maybe you can invest in a 50 mm lens as well. Then you can take even more stunning photos. Overall, I really like the photos that came out of the camera. The only drawback that I would say is that this camera has a lower dynamic range, so it struggles a bit when it comes to backlit situation. When there is a lot of bright light and also the dark area, this camera is not able to preserve the highlights and shadows. In those kind of situation, I would recommend using exposure bracketing. Now I'm gonna talk about the video aspects of this camera. Although this camera can do full HD 30 frames per second, but this camera do not have a dual pixel autofocus in it. So because of that, the focusing is not so smooth and the focus tracking is also not that great. Also, the lens would do a lot of focus hunting noise, which is not desirable in a video. So therefore, I would suggest you that if you want to make video with this camera, either you do manual focus or you fix your focus at one point before you start your recording. That way your focus would remain fixed at one place and your camera will not hunt looking for the focus. And if you do manual focus, then you can get great results with this camera as well, guys. So I'm gonna put onto the screen the sample video that I took with this camera. Overall, the colors and the video quality is pretty nice actually.
Hello guys, right now the audio that you are listening from the built-in mic on the camera, even though you can connect an external mic with this as well. So this is the kind of video that you can get with this camera. The autofocus in video is not so awesome, so I would recommend that you fix your focus before you start the video. If you try to change your focus from one place to another throughout the video, then there would be some kind of a focus hunting noise and yeah, it would ruin your video because this camera do not have the dual pixel autofocus. However, if you have fixed the focus once before starting the video, you can get really very good results. Let me show you the kind of video you can expect from this camera. So you can see the clarity in the video, the colors and everything looks really nice. So you can see right now I'm using the kit lens, and even with the kit lens, the colors and the video looks really good. If you know what you are doing, you can get great results even in video with this camera, even though it shoot only full HD up to 30 frames per second. But you can use that footage. If you have used a good lens, you can get really nice background blur as well. With a 50 mm lens or 85 mm lens, you can get that creamy bokeh as well in the video.
Now I'm gonna talk about for how much price you can get this camera used. Since this is a 11-year-old camera, but still it has some really nice features which makes this camera still usable by today's standard. So this camera you can get used for around 160 to 180 US dollar. You can also get this camera maybe for around 150 US dollar as well, depending on the condition of the camera. So the factor that it has a flip out screen, it has a external mic input, makes this still a very good buy even though it is an old camera, because if you know how to focus manually, then you can get great video even with this camera in today's time as well. And when it comes to the photography, this camera can take really nice photos as well. Should you get this camera in 2022 or 2023 or not? Well guys, if you are a beginner, if you are really tight on budget, then definitely you can go for this camera. You can get this used for around 150 US dollar, and this camera would let you learn the basics of photography and how to make better videos as well. Once you have mastered it, then maybe you can move on to a more expensive camera as well. But if you are not tight on budget, maybe then you can go for Canon 200D, Canon 70D, because those cameras have dual pixel autofocus, and the dual pixel autofocus is very useful when it comes to video because it keeps your face in focus all the time, and when you are moving the focus from one place to another, the focus transition is really very smooth and silent. But if you are really tight on budget, this camera can do a great job. You will never be disappointed with this camera. So I would say this camera is still relevant in 2023 and 2022 as well. I hope you like the video. If you like the video, please like it and share it and subscribe to the channel and press the notification icon.